In November 2024, Google pushed an update to Android phones running version 9 and above and quietly installed 2 applications that most users have never heard of, never consented to, and will almost certainly never find unless they go specifically looking for them. Neither application has an icon in the app drawer. Neither has a user interface you can open. Neither will show up in the normal list of apps you see on your home screen. They exist entirely in the background, and for the first few months after installation, millions of users had no idea they were even there. When people did begin discovering them in early 2025, the reaction was immediate and significant. Tim Sweeney, the founder of Epic Games, posted about one of them on February 24, 2025, and his post went viral. The Play Store rating for the app dropped to 1 out of 4 stars. And the questions people were asking were entirely reasonable. What are these apps? Why are they there, and what are they doing on my phone without my knowledge? The 2 applications are Android System Key Verifier and Android System Safety Core. Both arrived as part of Google's November 2024 system update package, bundled with Play Services updates and pushed to Android devices automatically, without a separate installation prompt, without a notification, and without any clear explanation in the update notes. Google did publish a blog post in October 2024 describing new safety features coming to Google Messages, and that post mentioned sensitive content warnings as one of the new features. But it never mentioned Safety Core by name. Users who read the announcement had no way of knowing that a new background application would shortly appear on their devices as a result. That lack of transparency is the heart of the complaint, and it is a legitimate one regardless of what these apps actually do. Android System Key Verifier is the simpler of the 2 to explain. It was introduced in November 2024 as part of a broader Android 15 feature called Contact Keys. Its purpose is to solve a genuine security problem in end-to-end encrypted messaging. When you send an encrypted message to someone, your phone and their phone each generate cryptographic keys that are used to scramble and unscramble the content of the conversation. The security of that encryption depends entirely on whether the key you're using actually belongs to the person you think you're talking to. If someone intercepts the key exchange and substitutes their own key, they can read your messages without either party realizing. Android System Key Verifier provides a system-level way for messaging apps to store those encryption keys, and for users to verify that the keys they hold for a contact have not been tampered with, confirming they are genuinely talking to the person they intend to reach. Apps like Signal and WhatsApp have their own mechanisms for this kind of key verification. Signal lets users compare a safety number with their contact, and WhatsApp lets users scan a security code in person or check a 60-digit key. Android System Key Verifier provides a unified system-level version of the same concept that any messaging application on Android can tap into, rather than each app building its own separate implementation. It works on Android 10 and newer, which means it covers the vast majority of Android devices currently in use. It has minimal permissions. The most notable is the ability to query installed packages, which it uses to identify which apps on the device are using end-to-end encryption. It has no AI or machine learning component, no network permissions for sending data externally, and according to Kaspersky's security analysts who examined it in March 2025, it presents no privacy concerns in its current form. It can be uninstalled by any user who wants to remove it. Android System Safety Core is the application that generated the overwhelming majority of the controversy, and it is significantly more complex. Its package name is Google Android Safety Core, and it was first described by Google as providing a privacy-preserving on-device user protection infrastructure for apps, which is one of the least informative descriptions any major technology company has offered for a piece of software that ended up on over 1 billion devices. What Safety Core actually does is provide an on-device machine learning framework that other applications can call into when they need to classify content. Its primary deployed use case is the sensitive content warnings feature in Google Messages, which detects images that may contain nudity and blurs them before displaying them, giving the recipient the choice of whether to view the content. The way Safety Core processes images matters for understanding whether it is actually a privacy threat. Android Experto's detailed technical analysis, published in March 2026, describes Safety Core as event-driven rather than continuous. It does not run a persistent background scanning loop. It does not index your photo library. It does not monitor your activity in real time. It activates only when another system component explicitly calls into it to evaluate specific content, and when it is called, it receives only the minimum information required for that specific evaluation. The analysis happens entirely on the device using locally stored machine learning models, and according to both Google's documentation and independent analysis by the Graphene OS security team, the results of that analysis are not transmitted to Google's servers. The app itself, when inspected in Android's permission manager, shows no permissions for contacts, messages, photos, microphone, camera, call logs, or location. Those permissions are intentionally absent at the framework level. The Graphene OS team, who maintain a security-focused version of Android and have a strong track record of scrutinizing Google's privacy claims, examined SafetyCore and published their assessment on X. They stated that SafetyCore does not perform client-side scanning that returns data to Google, and that classifying content for things like nudity detection is fundamentally different from the kind of surveillance scanning that reports content to an external authority. Their statement was direct. It is not usable for scanning users and reporting them to a service. It is not what this is, and characterizing it as such greatly misrepresents what the app does. Kaspersky's analysts reached a similar conclusion in March 2025, writing that neither Google nor independent security experts had identified any privacy concerns with SafetyCore's actual operation, and confirming that it runs locally without sending photos or associated information to external servers. And yet, the outrage people felt when they discovered SafetyCore was not irrational, and it is worth being honest about why. The core complaint is not really about what the app does. It is about how it arrived. Google installed a new application on over 1 billion Android devices without asking, without notifying users, and without providing any clear explanation in its update communications. The app's Play Store description at launch was vague enough to be meaningless. There was no opt-in prompt. There was no pop-up informing users that a new background service had been added to their phones. Many users discovered it only because it showed up in their app list or because a security tool flagged an unexpected installation. One user review noted pointedly that discovering a new app through a security alert rather than through a notification from Google itself is exactly the behavior associated with malware, even when the app in question is not malicious. The contrast with Apple's handling of a comparable feature is instructive. When Apple introduced communication safety in iMessages, which performs a similar function of detecting nudity in images sent to and from children, the company provided clear documentation, informed users, and made the feature genuinely optional with explicit controls. The feature received criticism for its own reasons, but nobody woke up one morning and found it silently installed on their iPhone with no explanation. Google's approach to SafetyCore was notably less transparent. After the viral backlash in February 2025, Google clarified its position and emphasized that the sensitive content warnings feature itself is opt-in for adult users, which is true. But the application that powers it had already been installed on 1 billion devices before those clarifications were made. The feature being opt-in is not the same as the installation being opt-in. It is worth clarifying the default state of SafetyCore because this is frequently misrepresented. For adult users, the sensitive content warnings feature that SafetyCore powers in Google Messages is disabled by default. Adult users have to actively turn it on for it to blur images. For users identified as minors, the feature is enabled by default, which is consistent with Google's framing of SafetyCore as partly a child protection tool. The SafetyCore application itself runs on Android 9 and above on devices with at least 2 gigabytes of RAM, which covers the vast majority of Android phones currently in use worldwide. It was pushed to devices through Google Play system updates and Google Play services, which are the same channels Google uses to push security patches and system-level fixes. Using those channels allowed the rollout to reach devices that no longer receive manufacturer firmware updates, which is a large portion of the Android install base. Finding both applications on your own phone requires going into your settings, rather than looking in your app drawer, because neither has a visible icon. Open Settings, go to Apps or Application Manager depending on your device, tap the option to show system apps, and then use the search function. Search for Key Verifier and you will find Android System Key Verifier. Search for SafetyCore and you will find Android System SafetyCore. Tapping on either app shows you its current state, the permissions it holds, and the options available to you. For Key Verifier, you will typically see an uninstall option, which will permanently remove it from your device until Google potentially pushes it again in a future update. For SafetyCore, the options vary by device. On many Android phones, it can be uninstalled through the App Settings page, or by finding it in the Google Play Store and selecting Uninstall from there. If you uninstall Android System Key Verifier, you lose the ability for messaging applications to use Android's unified key verification system for end-to-end encrypted conversations. If you primarily use Google Messages for RCS conversations with end-to-end encryption enabled, removing Key Verifier means you lose the ability to verify that the encryption keys in use have not been tampered with. If you use Signal or WhatsApp, those apps handle key verification independently and are not affected by removing Key Verifier. If you uninstall SafetyCore, sensitive content warnings in Google Messages will stop functioning. Future Google features that depend on SafetyCore's on-device content classification infrastructure will also be unavailable if and when they are deployed. Kaspersky noted that Google may reinstall SafetyCore as part of future system updates, so users who remove it may find it returning after an update runs. If you want to limit SafetyCore without removing it entirely, there are a few approaches worth knowing. You can use a network firewall application to block Safety Core from making any outbound internet connections, which eliminates any possibility of data leaving the device through that app regardless of what it does. You can also navigate to the sensitive content warning setting within Google Messages, which is found under your profile photo, then Messages settings, then Safety and Emergency, and confirm that the feature is disabled if you do not want images scanned. Disabling the feature in Messages turns off the functional use of Safety Core for image classification even while the app remains installed. On some Android versions, you can also revoke Safety Core's ability to receive updates through the Play Store by finding it in Play and selecting Disable Auto Updates from the three-dot menu. After the February 2025 backlash, Google took several steps toward greater transparency about both apps. The company published binary transparency logs for both Android System Safety Core and Android System Key Verifier through its Google System Services APK Code Transparency program. Binary transparency means that independent researchers can verify that the version of the app installed on a device matches the version that Google has publicly declared, making it harder to ship a covertly modified version that does something different from what the documentation describes. Google also clarified that both apps are delivered as separate Android packages, rather than being baked directly into the operating system firmware, which is part of why they are removable. The company acknowledged in responses to user concerns that its communication around the Safety Core rollout had been insufficient. Both of these apps sit at the intersection of two trends that are going to generate more situations exactly like this one in the coming years. The first is that Google is increasingly delivering new functionality through background system components pushed via Play services rather than through full operating system updates, which means new capabilities can appear on phones far faster than the traditional firmware update cycle allows. The second is that on-device AI is expanding rapidly across Android, and on-device AI requires new infrastructure components that need to be present on a device before the features that use them can be enabled. Safety Core is an early example of Google pre-installing an AI classification layer to support features it plans to deploy later. Users should expect more of this, not less. The question Google has not yet fully answered is how to do this in a way that respects users' reasonable expectation of knowing what is installed on their own devices. Neither Android System Key Verifier nor Android System Safety Core is spyware. The technical evidence does not support that conclusion, and independent security researchers including Kaspersky and the Graphene OS team have examined both and found no evidence of unauthorized data collection. But the absence of malicious intent does not mean users were wrong to be upset. You are entitled to know what is running on a device you own and paid for. You are entitled to be told when new software is installed, even if that software is installed for your benefit. The complaint that went viral in February 2025 was not primarily about what these apps do. It was about the principle that Google made a decision about your phone and did not tell you. That principle matters, and it does not stop mattering just because the apps in question turn out to be benign. Know what is on your phone, understand what it does, and make your own decision about whether it stays.